This decade is the decade of African independence. Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
Ghana, we now have freedom. Ghana, land of freedom. Toils of the brave and the sweat of their labors. Toils of the brave which have brought results.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Go Cause of Beauty. And today we're going to do a little, did I say little? I lied. It's not going to be little. A bit of a history lesson about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I'm sure everyone knows that name. If you don't, you should. You have to understand, like, I literally love learning about this stuff. It's like enjoyable to me. So not everyone would spend like 5 hours researching about him, but for me, it was just such a pleasure, you know. Basically, from the time he was born to the time that he went into the heavens. If there's anything that is wrong in this video that is not accurate, then yo, put it in the comments box. We're all learning. I'm only small, you know, just a girl. I'm just a small girl, you know. So every day I'm learning small by small, little by little. Alright guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you guys on my next one. Bye. When we think of Ghana independence and the Ghanaian liberation struggle, there's only one man we can think of, and that is Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. During his reign, he built the Tema Townships, Accra Tema Motorway, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and Akosombo Dam. And he played a key role in the organization of the African Union. Kwame Nkrumah was born on the 21st of September 1909 in a small village in the western region of Ghana. His father was a goldsmith and his mother was a retail trader. Kwame Nkrumah went to Achimota College and later became a teacher at Achimota School, which was the most prestigious high school under colonial rule. At the age of 26, Kwame Nkrumah left Ghana and went to the University of Lincoln. This is the point where ideals of socialism really became appealing to him. He was inspired by people like Marcus Garvey and the whole idea of return to Africa and black freedom.
In the United States of America,
This guy's voice is just touching my soul. Continue.
he came across, writings of George Padmore and co, who were in the Pan-African movement, W.E. Du Bois and all. And eventually in 1945, he linked up with them in Manchester, United Kingdom, where they organized the 5th Pan-African Congress. And they decided to accelerate the struggle for liberation of Africa.
His idea for the unification of all Africa later became known as Pan-Africanism. After 12 years away from Gold Coast, he was invited back to become Secretary General of the first ever political party in the Gold Coast, called the UGCC, United Gold Coast Convention. The other founding members and Kwame Nkrumah together became known as the Big Six. In 1948, there was a great unrest which resulted in boycotts because goods from Asian, Lebanese and European traders were too expensive for the local Ghanaian to afford. The colonial government blamed this unrest on the leaders of the UGCC. They felt that they were stirring up trouble, and this led to the arrest of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the other party members. They were imprisoned at the James Fort. This imprisonment did not deter Kwame Nkrumah at all. He was still very passionate about overthrowing the British rule. In 1951, people of the Gold Coast were able to vote for self-rule, and by this time Kwame Nkrumah had actually split from the UGCC and formed his own party called the CPP, Convention's People's Party, which won a landslide victory in the general election. The CPP had a big foot, and especially with the youth, they really believed in Kwame Nkrumah's ideologies and actively campaigned for his release.
In the struggle of CPP, there is victory for us.
So after the landslide victory, the pressure on colonial rulers to free Kwame Nkrumah had increased. The British Prime Minister Sir Charles Clarke eventually recognized Kwame Nkrumah as the Prime Minister of the Gold Coast. Yeah, that's it, Mr. Clarke. That's it, pa.
At Accra, a huge crowd cheers as Kwame Nkrumah leaves James Fort Prison freed by the governor as an act of grace on the eve of the inauguration of the new constitution.
And therefore, Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to have independence in 1957.
When the Gold Coast successfully get your independence officially, Ghana
Ghana is the name. Ghana, we wish to proclaim. We will be.
Between 1945 and 1965, there was a significant number of countries that gained independence from colonial powers. Kwame Nkrumah's speech on Ghana Independence Day, he states this, I thought it was really important. But independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. So it's not good enough that just Ghana is independent and is free, but it's important that the whole African continent is free from our colonial rulers. On the 31st of December, Kwame Nkrumah got married to an Egyptian woman. People did not understand why is he getting married to an Egyptian woman. Why did he want an Egyptian bride with all these fine Ghanaian girls just around? But I don't know, man. She did not speak any English and Kwame did not speak any Arabic. So it seems like a big mismatch. Why does he want to get married to an Egyptian bride? But the Bible says that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord. So it doesn't matter, you know. With this marriage, Kwame Nkrumah had 3 children, Jamal, Samira, and Sari. And from a previous relationship, because you know he was a naughty boy doing shuku before time, he had fathered a son called Francis Nkrumah.
He, I think, did not marry her because she was in love. I think he just felt that it was time for him because of his position. He was then prime minister and then eventually became president in 1960. I think he needed to have that image.
Kwame Nkrumah was seen as a man who was very passionate about African union. He believed that a unified Africa was necessary to help development and prosperity of the continent.
To him, African union was a passion, and I think he's right. Look at what is happening in Africa now. Congo, the richest country, what is there now? Warlords all over with this private enterprise from outside. They do what they like. I mean, and look at what is happening in all Africa. He foresaw that if we didn't come together, we would be in our present state.
KB Asante, who was the secretary at that time when Kwame Nkrumah was in power, said that he was a very charming man and he had an infectious smile. If you see his past videos and the pictures, you can see that, you know, he had a bit of a smile on him, and I was like, hey, if I was there back then, I would have tapped that, obviously before he was married, because how's your wife doing?
Perhaps you didn't hear what I said.
That was the charm of Nkrumah, a man who was very committed to Africa. Nkrumah lived and died Africa.
He was a good dancer and he liked music, yes. And we would hear music. But I remember high life music around us.
However, it wasn't long before Kwame Nkrumah declared Ghana a one-party state, and therefore he was perceived as a dictator. But it doesn't make sense. How can this guy who just took us from our colonial rulers and even gave us a chance to be able to even vote for our own leaders now become a dictator? There's many different arguments about it. People who are for Kwame Nkrumah.
But you see, that again is a total misunderstanding of African history. Almost all of the African states which broke away from the colonial yoke established one-party states. How can the person who led us to struggle for the right to elect our own leaders become a dictator? The person who led us in struggle to assert our rights as human beings become a dictator. Strange logic, strange definitions.
I waited one day when it was a good mood alone. Then I said, why do you want a one-party state? Then he said, you know, I've established so many industries and institutions, and I don't have enough competent people to man them. Many of the people who can do this are in the opposition. And that was why later I found the only way out was to have a one-party state. So we all belong.
Do you think a one-party state is good for democracy? If it wasn't democracy, then they should have left us with their colonial masters. They did not force us.
During his lifetime, Kwame Nkrumah had a few assassination attempts. One of them, he was literally just walking back from his office to his house, and one of the police guards that were there opened fire on him. Just like that, man. How? Another assassination attempt was in 1962 when he was returning back from Upper Volta, which is actually Burkina Faso now. A grenade was concealed in a bouquet of flowers and given to a school pupil to give to him. It exploded and the young girl died on the spot. In his lifetime, Kwame Nkrumah survived 5 assassination attempts. That's where the phrase Kwame Nkrumah never dies was coined. With all that was happening at this time, Ghana's economic situation really started to get bad. Cocoa, which was one of its primary exports, started to experience a decline in the world market. Unemployment was on the rise, food prices were on the increase, and state enterprises had collapsed.
At one time, we had the highest per capita income in Africa. Ghana, for the first time, was rationing soup, milk, and other things that we were buying at the Accra Sports Stadium. That was not befitting of Ghana.
During this whole crisis and time of hardship for Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah was still sending a whole load of money to Guinea. And I just feel like this just emphasizes how passionate he was about just the whole continent at large. Like your own backyard is burning, and now you're here helping the next person while your backyard, you know?
Guinea had to be told that they have support. And all Africa should know that we are together, that we should help each other. So to me, it wasn't the amount of money, a symbolic gesture of great import.
On the 21st of February 1966, Kwame Nkrumah flew out of Accra to Vietnam. Funny enough, he went away for a peace mission, but back home in Ghana was far from rosy. 3 days after Kwame Nkrumah had left, on the 24th of February, he was overthrown by a military coup.
The overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I had never seen such an explosion of joy.
Oh, we remember the whole day, the whole event. As I said, I was a little over 5, so mercifully, our father was not in town. He was out of the country, and we woke up at the sound of gunshots.
Because of my age, I wasn't aware of what was going on. But she said I was then asking the soldiers who used to guard the presidential palace, that's Flagstaff House, why they were not saluting me on that morning. Because I was not aware of what was going on, that they were overthrowing Nkrumah.
I remember Mother, the first thing she did, 2 things she did, in fact. One, she told us to pray. And we prayed. Remember, we knelt down and prayed. When we finished, she said, okay, now even if they fire at you, nothing will happen to you.
He went into exile in Guinea, where his friend and liberation comrade, Sekou Touré, gave him refuge and made him co-president. In April of 1972, Kwame Nkrumah drew his last breath in a hospital in Bucharest, Romania.
Qu'on ne vienne pas nous affirmer que Nkrumah est mort à cause d'un cancer de la gorge ou d'autres quelconques maladies. Non, Nkrumah a été tué par le cancer de la trahison.
There's no doubt that Kwame Nkrumah was dedicated to politics and Africa. His vision was that a united Africa would be a force to be reckoned with. In his book, I Speak of Freedom, Kwame Nkrumah states that divided, we are weak. United, Africa could be one of the greatest forces for good in the world.
Kwame Nkrumah went down the books of history as the firebrand in Africa's liberation struggle. His vision for a United States of Africa continues to be realized.
The reality is that they didn't stay on. Madiba is gone, Nkrumah is gone, Sekou Touré is gone, Samora Machel is gone, Nasser of Egypt is gone. That is our reality. Our task is to create a new core of leaders.
Visionary leaders. Leaders who want to see Africa free.
Leaders who want to help Africans to develop confidence in themselves,
in their culture, in the food they eat,
in the way they dress, in the way they walk,
in the way they talk. Leaders who want to encourage Africans to take control of their own resources.
We need to engineer those new leaders.
That is our task.
Those who have hats on, to take off your hats and let the band play our national anthem. And from now on, that national anthem is the national anthem of the Gogo to be played on all occasions.
The mood was electrified. Everybody was seeing the dawn of a new beginning. This was the day on which he said that the African was capable of governing himself. And he said that we as Africans should be allowed to make our own mistakes. That was an incredible day.
It's rough and smooth.